Christine, Laura, what you're seeing behind me is one of multiple locations that have been burning in Kenosha, Wisconsin over the course of the night. A second night since Jacob Blake was seen shot in the back 7 times by a police officer. And what you are seeing now, these images came and come in stark contrast to what we saw over the course of the daytime hours in Kenosha and into the early evening, which were largely peaceful demonstrations in the face of law enforcement. It wasn't until night fell that things began to get a little bit more contentious. Things were thrown back and forth. Police started using some of those crowd dispersal tactics like tear gas, even playing very loud sounds to push them out. And then what you are seeing, the common theme that ties all of this together, is an expression of anger and frustration over what people feel like has become an all too familiar story.
Did you see what was on the screen in that CNN clip? They called it fiery, but mostly peaceful protests. They didn't use the word riot. And they didn't say arson or torture. They said it's fiery, but mostly peaceful. And in the other screen, missiles, including fireworks, I should tell you, being shot at police. And CNN says, oh no, this is very mostly peaceful. Just incredible, unbelievable. And all this happening in the background as Donald Trump has his Republican Party's convention, which has been very successful in terms of elocuting a positive message. At least that's how it looks to me. And according to audience statistics, 6 times more people watching the Republican convention than its Democrat counterpart. Joining us now to talk about this is one of our best Sherpas on American politics, and he's the author of the new book, which I recommend. It's called Red November: Will the Country Vote Red for Trump or Red for Socialism? I'm talking about Joel Pollak, Senior Editor-at-Large at Breitbart.com. Joel, great to see you again.
You too. I like that. I'm the Sherpa of conservative analysis. That's great. That means I get to carry all the baggage. You know, I met a Sherpa when I was a law student who was driving a taxi in Boston, and he told me he was from Nepal, and I saw his ID on the visor, and his last name was Sherpa, and it turned out he came from a family of Sherpas in the Himalayas, the real deal. So,
well, that's incredible. Well, you are our Sherpa because you're helping guide us through these mountain passes.
Well, you will reach the summit, I have no doubt.
Well, thank you very much. So much going on. The riots in Kenosha, which is not a big city. It's not a traditionally urban or black city. I think it's a pretty small town, regular kind of place, but it has Black Lives Matter style riots that have torched the place. What are your quick thoughts on that?
Well, that part of Wisconsin is very interesting. So it's right by the Illinois border. I know it pretty well because I grew up in the northern suburbs of Chicago. So if you ever drove to Milwaukee or took the train, you went through Kenosha. And it has outlet malls. It is a gateway to southwestern Wisconsin. It's about half an hour or so south of Milwaukee. And there are actually some black communities up there. There's a large black community on the Illinois side of the border in the city of Waukegan. And Kenosha has a black community, and also Sturtevant is a town nearby where there's a large black middle-class community in a somewhat rural/suburban area. So the Midwest is not what the coastal stereotype would have you believe. It's actually quite diverse. That district was Paul Ryan's district when he was Speaker of the House, when he was still in Congress, and he made a point of reaching out to the black communities of that region as well as the Latino communities in the area. So a really interesting part of the country and absolutely spectacularly beautiful in the summertime. It's just a shame that everything is happening as it is. But if it can happen in Kenosha, it can happen anywhere. And the shooting that started it all began on Sunday. Jacob Blake, age 29, was shot by police in a confrontation. Much was made out of the fact that he was shot in the back, which is true. And he was reported widely as having been unarmed. That turns out not to be true, or very likely not to be true. The eyewitness who recorded the infamous cell phone video said that police were shouting at him to drop the knife, drop the knife. And the state prosecutors have determined after an investigation that he did in fact have a knife with him. It was recovered from the floorboard of the car. And remember, he was shot as he was reaching into the car. He opened the driver's side door and was reaching for something as if on the seat or on the floor. So police were confronted by a man who was very likely armed. He also had scuffled with them before. There's a video from a different angle that shows him fighting with police. And apparently they had attempted to tase him, that is to use non-lethal stun weapons, and they don't work on everybody. Some people escape, some people just get lucky. The taser misses. It only has a couple of cartridges or a couple of darts in it. So he kept resisting arrest and evading, and that's what led to the situation. Almost all of these bad situations involve people resisting arrest. And whether they're white or black, we had a case here in California a few years ago in Fresno of a white teenager who was shot by police in similar circumstances. Resisting arrest is the common denominator. But the other common denominator in these cases is fake news. And so you have fake news telling everyone that this guy is unarmed and so forth, that he was simply shot by police while he was in his car. You know, all of these false characterizations of the circumstances. We were also told that he was simply intervening in a domestic dispute somewhere else. Turns out that the woman who was living at the address to which the police came had actually called the police because he was not supposed to be there. Evidently, there was some history between them. And he had a warrant out for his arrest. He was charged with sexual assault, among other crimes, and the police had been looking for him for almost 2 months. That, on top of reports in local media that he had a prior arrest for violent behavior involving a gun. So police knew all this. And on that previous occasion, apparently, he had to be subdued with a police dog because he also resisted arrest. So this gentleman, as many other positive qualities as he may have had a history of violence and run-ins with the law. And police knew all that, or likely knew all that, when they tried to apprehend him. And all of that, if it were known, if people had waited for the facts, would have taken some of the sensationalism out of the protest.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.